Let's talk about something that's been simmering for far too long in our society, a problem that, despite all the media coverage, still feels like it's lurking in the shadows. Racial profiling. It's a term many of us have heard, but how many of us truly understand its implications? This isn't just a few isolated incidents. This is a nationwide issue that affects real people every single day. You see, the phrase "driving while black," it's not just a catchy slogan. It's a chilling reality for countless African Americans. It's that feeling of dread when you see those flashing lights behind you, knowing that your skin color might be the only reason you're being pulled over. It's the fear that grips your heart as you comply with the officer's demands, praying that you don't become another statistic, another headline in the news. Let's take a moment to reflect on Laurel Riggs. Picture this, a 42-year-old marketing executive doing nothing wrong, just driving down the highway. He gets pulled over by two officers who treat him like a criminal, hands on their guns, watching him like he's about to make a move. He complies, he's polite, he hands over his documents, and yet he's left sitting in his car, trembling with fear. Why? Because he's black. This isn't an isolated incident, it's a pattern. Riggs received a citation for an illegible license plate, but what he really got was a traumatic reminder that his life could be in danger just because of the color of his skin. Then there's Sean Lee, a professional athlete, someone who you'd think would be immune to this kind of treatment. But no, he and his girlfriend were handcuffed on the side of the road for half an hour, mistaken for criminals because his vehicle fit a description of a stolen car, a Jeep Cherokee mistaken for a Honda sedan. It's absurd, it's infuriating, and it's a testament to a system that too often sees color before character. And let's not forget George Washington and Darrell Hicks, who were treated like suspects in a string of armed robberies simply because they looked nervous. They were handcuffed and detained, only to find out later that they didn't even fit the description of the actual suspects. This is not about a few bad apples, folks. This is about a tree that's deeply rooted in a culture of bias and discrimination. In Colorado, a class action lawsuit revealed that Black and Latino motorists were stopped simply because they fit a drug courier profile. Can you imagine that? Driving while black or brown, and suddenly you're a suspect. Janita Whitfield was pulled over, told she didn't signal properly, and felt she had no choice but to consent to a search of her vehicle. She had kids in the car, and all she wanted was to get home. The police didn't find anything, of course, but the damage was done. The trauma was real, and the fear was palpable. And let's talk about Connecticut, where a police chief issued a memo encouraging officers to develop a sense of proclivity towards certain individuals based on their appearance. Alvin Penn, a state senator, was stopped in a predominantly white town and questioned about his presence. He asked why he was being stopped, and the officer had the audacity to say he didn't need a reason. Can you imagine that? Being treated like a criminal for simply existing in a space where you're not supposed to be. This isn't just a series of unfortunate events. It's a systemic issue that needs to be addressed. It's a culture that tells people of color they are inherently suspicious, that they must prove their innocence at every turn. It's not just about the individual encounters. It's about the larger narrative that tells us who belongs and who doesn't. The media can shine a light on these stories, but it's up to us to keep the conversation going. We can't afford to let this issue fade into the background, to become just another headline. It's time for our leaders, our communities, and each of us as individuals to recognize that racial profiling is not just a problem for a few. It's a national crisis that demands our attention and our action. We need to advocate for policies that protect all citizens, regardless of their skin color. We need to hold law enforcement accountable for their actions and demand transparency in their practices. We need to educate ourselves and those around us about the realities of racial profiling to ensure that these stories are not just anecdotes, but catalysts for change. So what can we do? Start by listening. Listen to the stories of those who have been affected. Share these stories. Speak up when you see injustice. Support organizations that are working to combat racial profiling and advocate for reform. Engage in conversations that might be uncomfortable, but are necessary for growth and understanding. Change won't happen overnight, but it starts with us. It starts with acknowledging the problem and working together to uproot the biases that have taken root in our society. Let's not allow these stories to become just another part of the narrative. Let's make them a rallying cry for justice, for equality, and for a future where everyone can drive without fear.